Hello, I'm Sean Nemitz, and this is day 2 of becoming an illustrator. Today, I'm going to start building a case study. What we're going to do is build a brand new brand, and what I'm going to do is develop a brand where I can make illustration a big part of it and make my own drawings that the brand will use in real life context. Well, at least it will look like real life context, but more than just a drawing on its own, it'll be a drawing used maybe on shirts or on posters or whatnot. Then when I finish this project, it'll be something to use to sell and show others how they could use my work. So let's check it out. Okay, so here we are. I'm in a software called Figma, and this is a tool typically used for web design, and you can use it for all kinds of graphic design, but mostly web design. And I'm going to show you a few steps to do a super light version of creating a brand identity with a little bit of strategy sprinkled in. Now, the point here ultimately is to get to the illustrations and put them in a context. So the point isn't to make an actual brand or shop or anything that we're going to do. But we do want to make it look realistic and as good as possible, because this will be part of my portfolio in an effort to get hired to do this. So I've decided that I want to do something in the realm of sports, because I think you can see. Can you see that? Can you see me? I don't know if you can. Actually, I think I'm just recording my screen. Sorry. Anyways, I'd like to draw sports, basketball or skateboarding or soccer and stuff like that. And so I thought I should do something around sports. It'd be really cool to get hired, maybe by, maybe not Nike, but maybe like a kind of a cooler, smaller sports brand, or do some basketball drawings. So I'm going to do a brand somewhere in the realm of sports. Doesn't exactly have to be a team sport or anything like that. I'll show you a few tools I'll use to make a super light brand strategy. Now, the reason for this is just this is the background I have, and just the skill set I know and what I'm familiar with. And that's why I'm doing it. But also it's like I'm doing my due diligence to try to make something unique that will look even better. So one of the tools I use is this matrix. Essentially, it's 4 quadrants that you could place things into. And this is a kind of a competitive landscape matrix. So here I've got logos of 4 major coffee chains. We've got the McDonald's one, McCafe, we've got Dunkin', Tim Hortons, and Starbucks. So the way you use this tool is there's 2 axes. There's the X and the Y axis. And you, depending on the different companies that you're going to use, you create what those axes will be. So in this situation, on the X-axis, I decided that is going to be kind of the price point. So on the left, it's going to be the cheaper option. On the right, it would be the more expensive option. And because this is just an example, and I'm doing it quickly to explain it, it doesn't need to be perfectly accurate. But so the left axis is going to be the cheaper option, and the right will be the more expensive. Now, it's important that when you create these axes, that the 2 contrasting sides are both positive to somebody. And so on the right, we'll call it more premium. And so there are people who prefer a higher end option that is more expensive, but there are also people who prefer a cheaper option, and that's good enough, and maybe they just think it's great. That's okay. So that's what we did there. The y-axis, I decided based on these categories to rank them on coziness. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of thinking overall, like what makes them different, because there's room for each of these companies to exist right now in our marketplace. So how, and so I'm thinking, well, what makes them different? So whether or not I'm correct, I felt that Starbucks was the most expensive out of these four, and McDonald's was the cheapest. And then on the y-axis is the kind of the comfortability or coziness of the actual space. So on my experience, I put Starbucks having the most cozy space out of all four of these, and Dunkin' having the least cozy space. I just don't have a lot of experience with Dunkin', but the one I've been to was at like a gas station stop, and it was really not cozy, and it just felt like you're going to get diarrhea just because you were in there. And then McDonald's, hit or miss. I tend to be super cold in those McDonald's. And then Tim Hortons, I just gave them the benefit of the doubt, put them in the middle. But what you can do as you place these on these axes is you can find a white space, an open space where your new brand could fit. So if the reason I use these coffee examples, the only reason you would do that is if you're creating another coffee shop. And so you're like, well, how do I stand out, or how do I, survive? Well, you'd plot these out, and then you would pick a space where there's an opening. And so in this situation, I see two openings. Again, we didn't do this very thoroughly. This was a quick and dirty one. So I see an opening in a really expensive and less comfortable space. So I think I contradicted myself because I said they both had to be positive to somebody. So let's just say on that y-axis, like the bottom of it is cozy, and then the top is more like, let's just call it fast, grab and go. And so that's a positive for some people. So like maybe cozy versus fast. So there's an opening up here in this top right corner, and it's on the expensive fast. And there's also an opening over here in the bottom left corner for cheap and cozy. And I bet in 2025 and 2026 that would be a really like something people would want, something that's cheap but also cozy. There's really no free space to hang out and to be cozy in our society today, which is really a shame. So maybe that would be an area that I would focus on. The second exercise that I would do in this situation is these personality sliders. And so each of these, there's 5 of them. They're a slider. It's kind of like a spectrum. Where are you on the spectrum of being an elite kind of company or a mass appeal company? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just defining what your brand will be like in terms of the personality. Is it more playful or serious? And so on. So pinpointing these down early on would help to make decisions as you move forward. Let's say you're writing copy, or maybe you're, designing assets, the photography, the logo, the colors, all these different assets. Having these personality sliders defined ahead of time will make those decisions easier and kind of just fall into place. Okay, so I went ahead and did this with the sport themed brand. So, oops, just flipped that. Okay. So I just took 4, or I guess I lost one somehow. That's a bummer. Well, I had 4 initially. Anyways, let's just pretend there's one over here, okay? And I just took 4 like running brands or like running apparel brands, shoes and socks and stuff like that. And I put them on this matrix. So there's a brand called Soar, one called On Running, one called Thorlo, and the other one was called like Karhu or something like that. It was a Finnish brand, and it was kind of a cool story. They're the ones who created the 3 stripes and then sold it to Adidas. That's what they say on their website, at least. So that's pretty interesting. Anyways, I plotted each of these brands out on the matrix, and what I did here was on the x-axis, it would have been on the far left, it would have been historic, and Karhu would have been over there actually. Pretty sure. Okay. And on the far right, it would be a more modern brand. So I'm taking into account like the way they design everything, the way it feels, and just my overall impression. The y-axis would be on the top, a more premium option, and on the bottom, a more budget option. And so what I did was I selected this white space. I felt there was an opening for a new brand to emerge that would be historic and premium in running. Again, I didn't do this super thoroughly. Maybe there is a brand that's already in there, but this is all we need for now. So we're going to build something that is historic in some ways and premium. So I went to the next exercise for these personality sliders and just started to define them, how it would be. So this would be slightly more towards elite. So maybe that just means it's somehow exclusive or more expensive. It would be a real fine balance of being serious and playful. I kind of have this vision that it would be kind of like sarcastic or snide or whatever, and have little jokes here and there, but also be taken seriously. And then I felt some of these sliders had to be on the extremes. So I went full towards being a rebel. And then later I went full to being mature and classic. And then more of authority than a friend. Another thing you can do with a brand is you can think of a celebrity. It doesn't have to be an actor, but I usually tend towards actors. Or maybe they're characters that they play in a movie. Or maybe just a character in general, from a movie, from a show, from anything. But that can help you define like the voice and also with these personality points. So as I was like plotting this together, I thought, what if Robert De Niro was interested in making his own like running apparel brand? And so I kind of ran with that. So the idea of it being mature and classic, but rebellious, for some reason that felt like Robert De Niro to me, and this could be something really fun to make. So after that, I created basically a mood board, and it's a super wide mood board here. And this is just kind of like ideas and maybe the vibe of what this brand can be like. So I included a lot of elements that were like more luxurious, or rich. Got some pictures of De Niro, also with Pacino playing hoops. This is one of my favorite photos of all time. I would love a full-size, full-resolution poster of that. I just love it. And I'm looking for this combination of elements, again, with this idea of it being mature and classic, but also rebellious. And so thinking about the way I draw, it's kind of in line with some of these drawings being looser, more playful, and then how could that work in a kind of mature, like sophisticated setting? So these are some of the ideas that I've, kind of just been thinking about and letting swim around and gravitating towards. So that's what I'm going to do. So what I'll do is just kind of create some of these assets, like just a simple logo and colors and stuff like that. These images are not intended to be like what I copy verbatim or anything like that. They're just setting the tone, giving me the ideas, like giving me a starting point to remix maybe some of these elements to get to a new place. So the next step I'm going to take is putting together some of these brand assets, like the logo and maybe photography or color. And then from there, I can just start drawing and putting my drawings in this context. If you're an illustrator and you're not a brand designer, this is an exercise that I think could be really helpful for you if this is the kind of work you want to do. And if maybe you're like me and you're a designer trying to become an illustrator, you could do this as well. And if you're neither, this is just a little insight, maybe more than you asked for, on how somebody might approach these things. So let's move on to getting these logo and brand assets together. And we'll see if that helps to define more of like what kind of drawings I should use or how I might approach it. Okay, so here we are. I decided to make this fake brand, and I did some things so far, like find out where I wanted it to fit in the competitive landscape. And the decision there was we wanted something that was historic and premium. So that's kind of where we're going. I created this mood board, and in it I had this image of Robert De Niro and Al Pacino playing basketball, which is just beautiful. And I couldn't help but be really inspired by that and wanting to use that. So basically, this is a brand that's a company made by Robert De Niro, and he wanted some active wear, some stuff that he could jaunt around town in. I just kind of got attracted to that idea and I just imagined him talking about this and creating something that he felt was needed. So I imagine him using the word jaunt, and that ended up being the name for this active wear, sportswear company. So it's called Jaunt, and it's like the idea here is not everything needs to be a competition or to give you this high performance like promises like Nike and all the others. Instead, it's something comfortable that you might want to wear as you go get coffee or go run some errands or go for a little jaunt through the park or whatever. So that's essentially the idea here. And I made some pieces. I tried playing around with typography quite a bit, and I decided I'm just going to draw what's going to be like the main logo or the word mark here. So I haven't quite settled on if it's going to be in this graphite type texture, but this is just something I drew on the iPad and put up, and I kind of liked it and felt that would be unique. And I'll keep playing with that. The idea here is kind of like mixing high and low. So something should feel traditional in the luxury space, but something should feel the opposite and be loose or playful. And so the personality sliders that I did, they said I landed on extreme on the rebel side and also extreme on the mature and classic side. So that's what I'm talking about, having it feel both classic and historic and mature, but also with like a rebellious nature to it. So that's what I'm aiming for. So with the word mark being hand drawn in this way and feeling really imperfect and loose, maybe it's just how De Niro wrote that word down and they just went with it. This is almost like a signature version of that, and so this is it's really hard to read, but it's a big letter J, and a letter A fits inside that, and a U fits inside that, and then an N and a T fit inside that. Just playing around, creating another mark. With the typography, I want things to feel kind of traditional and classic, and then maybe if I was a copywriter, or maybe I'll come up with something, it'll look classic, but we'll inject some humor, some sarcasm, some dry humor perhaps into there. I'll show this little clip of me working on this drawing. I'll show you the inspiration. And if you can guess the inspiration somehow before I show it to you, let me know. One of my favorite books growing up was Sweet Pickles, as you can see here. And what I love about this is, well, the front, you get the cast of characters. And so you get to see everybody who exists in this world. And you get to know their names and kind of get familiar with them. And you might have a favorite character and you look forward to their book or something. And then in the back, these are the end papers, is what they're called, I think. The back is basically a map. And it's just a grid of blocks in this town. And what's really cool about this is, as a kid, I would look at this a lot and then look at the story, go back and forth. And these are not just randomly placed or put in here just for decoration, but this is the layout of the town. And so, for example, if you saw somebody running, this direction from that house, they will run into this place. And so it's like accurate. It's super cool. So anyways, I just took some inspiration from that. like slightly skewed perspective view of the town. And I thought that would make for a cool picture for jaunt, because the idea is of a jaunt is like maybe you don't know where you're going, or it's less purposeful but more enjoyable. And so that's how I came up with this drawing. I don't know that it works. Like, I'm starting to feel the tension between just, making something that was fun to make and that thing being appropriate for the project at hand. So, but that's what this channel is about. It's about showing you all of the process, and maybe you giving me feedback on how to get, closer to where I want it to be. But ultimately, it's just to show the progression that I'm going to make and figuring out how to do this the best I can. So I'm not going to lie. Like, I think this idea is pretty cool. And I even like how I threw in the logo. I had this idea that the logo should be in like the corner, and I was like, well, what if I did it on a bus? And so then I just put the logo in there and then drew the bus around it. So I think there's some cool ideas in there. I like the really limited color, and then using this orange color to highlight things. So it's got potential. I just don't think it's there yet. I think it's got a ways to go, but there's a lot of like little ideas in there that I would like to try to retain. I also just like that it doesn't have a ton of color and it has that texture. So we'll see. I landed on this color palette because two reasons. I felt it felt kind of rich. This is like a dark brown orange, and then this is like an orange, but it's not super bright. It's not super energetic or youthful. To me, it felt pretty classic. And so I just like how that looked. It felt rich and classic and also unique. So that's what I'm going to be going for there. And then I'm just applying these assets to, other things. What could it look like on a hat? What could it look like on posters? Obviously, this is working, like with the De Niro just looking tough, and the logo on top, and even seeing this serif typeface. It's kind of like Times New Roman, and it feels right. It feels like kind of plain, but very confident at the same time. So dress your age, play half. I'm just making stuff up. So yeah, I got a lot of work to do in terms of like getting the illustration down. That's what this project's all about. I have anything else? This image was super inspirational for me. And it's kind of why I tried that route that I did with the drawing. Was I just loved how we have this pretty minimal situation here. It's all white, a lot of white space, and you just have, again, the serif name here for Senzu Nightcap, and then you have the loose mark, but it feels handmade and classy at the same time. And so there was something to that I wanted to try to pull out and emulate. I don't think I did it the way I wanted to, but that's okay. Like, it's just a starting point, and I can kind of keep playing around and figuring that out. So, so this is where I'm at. I suppose I got to stop kind of noodling when it comes to the stuff like the logo and stuff. That's not the super important part. The point of this project is to, create a suite of illustrations. So it's kind of like I'm defining my taste and refining my taste here, because on the one hand, maybe if I made a series of these kind of drawings, maybe they're going to work and be really unique. Maybe that's why I'm like unsure about it, because it's unique. On the other hand, maybe I'm unsure about it just because it's not finished. It's not quite good enough yet. It's not there. Sometimes it's one or the other of those I've learned so far, but we shall see. So that's it. Thanks for checking this out. I will continue to create a little library of illustrations, probably somewhere around 5 for this piece. And if I get 5 good ones that look great, that carry this personality and communicate this message, I think that will be a victory. So that's that.